When it comes to the Cincinnati Bengals, it's becoming such a familiar, tired, played out refrain every single season. It's you assume that this team will find a way to get to the playoffs, but is it going to matter? Is it going to be yet another one and done year in the playoffs? And every year, it's the same deal. Every year, the Bengals find a way to become the Bungles when it comes playoff time. And it's sad because at times over the past few years, you've gotten that sense while watching them that maybe this year will be different. But if you ever thought that a year was going to be different, you really thought for sure it was going to be this year. I mean, Andy Dalton was playing a lot better, but of course, then he throws a pick and he goes down to tackle somebody in the Pittsburgh game and he breaks his goddamn thumb. Figures. Andy Dalton, was in the conversation for MVP at one point in time during the season, and somewhat legitimately, frankly, he was playing a lot better, a lot more consistent, and he was having more good games than he was bad. That's for damn sure. So you get star performances out of guys like A.J. Green. You got a solid year when he was on the field out of Tyler Eifert. I think he had like 13 touchdown catches. Defensively, Carlos Dunlap, Geno Atkins both had double-digit sacks. This was a defense that was, frankly, in a lot of ways, pretty much elite, second in the league in points allowed per game. I think he averaged like 17.4 points allowed per game. That's going to win you a lot of football games. On top of the fact that this is an offense that can actually do some things. And that's what's frustrating about it when you watch this goddamn team. Is you had a defense that was second in the league in points allowed per game, seventh in the league in rushing yards allowed per game. When you look at 2014 and how horrible they were as a pass rushing team, now come 2015, they finished 10th in the league in sacks. It was such a huge, dramatic improvement. Offensively, seventh in the league in points scored per game. This team should be doing shit. And this is a team, to be fair to them, did really good in the regular season. It's the best regular season out of the past 5, 12-4. They won the North again, but 12-4. And they were in the mix to end up with a first-round bye, if not home field advantage, throughout the AFC playoffs. And, I could sit there and talk about all this other shit, but at the end of the day, it really doesn't fucking matter. Because when shit came to get, this team didn't fucking get it done again. Now, you could look at losses to teams like Houston and Denver and Arizona, and you could say if they would have beaten Denver, that would have given them home field advantage throughout, and that's true. But frankly, if they would have beaten Houston instead of losing to them 10-6 on Monday night, they would have had home field advantage throughout. It was a very Bengals game, a very Bengals loss. You knew that one at some point in time could come back to bite them in the ass, and it did. Because instead of having that extra week of rest from the bye week to where maybe Andy Dalton got healthy enough to where he could play, where you got a chance for this team to be in a different situation, a different environment, you get them past the wild card game automatically. They lose to the Houston Texans 10-6 in a crappy-ass Monday Night Football game. They find a way to lose against the Denver Broncos. They find a way ultimately to lose against the Arizona Cardinals. So even when they're losing, they're competitive, but they're not getting the job done when they need to, and I think it ultimately hurt him, especially, like I said, with Andy Dalton's injury late in the year. I mean, Jesus Christ. Another year, another playoff trip, another first-round playoff exit. What I think makes this one the worst for the Cincinnati Bengals, their fan base, the organization, is you were playing your backup quarterback. Think about this. You were playing your backup quarterback. You were at home. You were playing the Steelers, who were on their third string running back at that point in time, and you still couldn't get the job done. You still couldn't get the damn job done. How in the fuck does that happen? How do you let the Steelers come in there and win? And not only that, win in the way that they did, and you implode in such a bungles fucking way. I mean, it's so ridiculous. Vontez Burfict, Pac-Man Jones. It's just the stupidity of this team and its ability to inflict its own wounds and shoot itself in the goddamn foot is incredibly striking. I mean, it's unequaled by many teams in any professional sport anywhere in the fucking world. Again, I could go through all this well-prepared, thought-out bullshit, but at the end of the day, it's a fifth straight year of making the playoffs, a fifth straight year. They're done after the wild card round. They had no business losing this fucking wild card game to the Pittsburgh Steelers at home, and yet they fucking did. But they shot themselves in the goddamn foot. Again. How does that happen? How do you do that? And I'm really surprised, frankly, based off of how that wild card game went down. The fact that this is the fifth straight year you've made the playoffs and you didn't get the job done. You didn't win a playoff game. You're now stagnating. You're growing some in the regular season, but playoffs is the same goddamn result. I'm stunned, especially with how this team conducted themselves and the way they conducted themselves and how it cost them in the wild card game, that freaking Marvin Lewis still has a job with them. I really am. I know he's been there 13 years. I know Mike Brown likes to be loyal to guys. And Marvin Lewis, to be fair, has done a lot of good for that organization, especially in recent years. But my God, at some point in time, is the goal to get to the wild card round of the playoffs, or is the goal to try and go win a fucking Super Bowl? Furthermore, how could you not be embarrassed if you're a Bengals fan or a member of the Bengals organization, seeing how your team conducted and carried itself during that wild card game? At some point in time, enough is enough. I mean, it's like you don't even really want to talk about this team. Because you can go back 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, and a lot of the themes are the exact fucking same. This time, the only thing that's different is we're blaming Andy Dalton in part for the loss just because of the fact he couldn't play because of the goddamn broken thumb. Didn't have anything to do with his actual play on the field. He wasn't even on the field for this time. And frankly, when it mattered, there were times where A.J. McCarron played good enough in that playoff game where the Bengals should have won that damn game. And they didn't get the job done. Because of the Bengals, and they're stupid. This is a very talented team on both sides of the ball. But man, oh man, their number one organization priority this offseason has to be clean up shit. They got to get rid of some of the fucking knuckleheads. They got to get rid of some of the dumbasses. They got to figure out who's there to win a championship and who's there to be a jackass. You know, sometimes when you look at character, we talk about character in different senses. I think sometimes it's important to look at football character. And there are times where I question the football character of the Cincinnati Bengals. And I think based off of the results of recent years, it's fair and just to question the football character of the Cincinnati Bengals. The judgment, the discipline, and at some point in times, I do think that is a reflection of the head coach, Marvin Lewis. You know, you can't let the inmates run the asylum, for lack of a better word. You're the chief. They're the Indians. You got to keep your tribe in check. And they got to know that some of those things are just not acceptable. And you cannot, I don't care about Joey Porter. I don't give a damn about anything else. You have to be smarter and more disciplined. And I do think, again, that is a reflection of the leadership, or in this case, the lack of leadership from the Cincinnati Bengals coaching staff, most notably head coach Marvin Lewis. And I like Marvin Lewis. I think he's done a lot of good things in Cincinnati. And I think it's quite an accomplishment to make the playoffs 5 straight years. It is. But you have 0 playoff wins to show for it. And what real progress can you point to? I mean, this year you went 12-4. Fucking had a top-flight defense and an offense that could score points with almost any goddamn buddy. You had the formula for a Super Bowl team. Even with the starting quarterback going down, you should have been able to find a way. I mean, that AFC was doo-doo. You lost to the freaking Pittsburgh Steelers with the third-string goddamn running back and that terrible-ass defense and a banged-up Big Ben. And you eventually knocked Antonio Brown out of the fucking game, and you still found a way to fucking lose. You still found a way to lose. If there was ever a point in time where the AFC was ripe for the taking, and there was a team that had the right formula to go ahead and win the goddamn AFC North, or not the AFC North, but the AFC playoffs and make it to Super Bowl 50, it was this year, this time for the Cincinnati Bengals. I personally think they would have beaten the New England Patriots, and I sure as hell think they would have beat the Denver Broncos come playoff time, especially with Peyton Manning at quarterback. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? And yet they blew yet another opportunity. And I don't care who you are or what organization you are, you can only blow these opportunities so many times before those opportunities don't come knocking anymore. And you're going to wish that door was staring you in the face and you realize it's gone off the hinges. So in terms of draft needs, does it really matter? I guess it does, because they have some areas of concern. I think first and foremost, they got to upgrade at defensive tackle. I know for years a bane in the existence of a lot of Bengals fans has been D'Amato Pecco. They don't know why he always gets the starting gig. They don't think he's very good, and frankly, they're right. He's over 30 now. It's time for him to go. They need a better complement to Geno Atkins inside a defensive tackle, because if they got that, imagine how much scarier that front four of the freaking Bengals would be, with Dunlap and Johnson on the outside and Atkins and a more competent actual NFL starting caliber defensive tackle playing opposite him at the nose position. That sure would be scary. That's a Super Bowl defensive line, if I do say so. And the good thing is for the Bengals is, even if they don't address it in the first round, even though I think there's a very strong possibility they would look to address it in the first round, the depth at the defensive tackle position for the type of defense that they run is very good in the first 3 to 4 rounds of this draft. There's a lot of quality talent there. You can get long-term contributors, long-term starters in rounds 2, 3, and 4 as well. So as a result, it might be the number one need. I think it is technically the number one need in terms of players that you could bring in through the draft. I would be surprised if they don't address it, either in round 1 or somewhere on day 2 of this year's draft. I look defense as well, and I look at the back portion of that secondary. Reggie Nelson's over 30. He had a good year, but again, he's over 30. You've got guys like Leon Hall, Pac-Man Jones. Darqueze Dennard has done nothing. They still need some help at corner. They need some help at safety. They need some young athletic talent there. Outside linebacker, I think, is still a need. A lot of people point to, Paul Dawson. They took him in the 3rd round in this past draft. Well, I would say if Paul Dawson was good enough to have started, he probably would have for Cincinnati, and he just wasn't. They could use help at outside linebacker, or even inside linebacker for that matter. In part, maybe they could move on from Vontaze Burfict. And I know they're not going to, but they could use some young talent there as well and see what you got. Offensively, I think the biggest need that they have would be at wide receiver, because you've got Sanu and Marvin Jones both heading into free agency. You may keep one of them. You might not want to keep both of them. They may be too expensive for you to want to keep either one of them. And where you're sitting at pick number 24 in the first round, a guy like Braxton Miller might be very appealing to play as a complement to A.J. Green. Other wide receivers later on in the draft, again, like Josh Doxson, Tyler Boyd. I could go on and say guys like I could play out of the slot. Guys like Sterling Shepard, Leonte Carew, Kenny Lawler. There are different options that are there. Wide receiver could be in the strong consideration with their first round pick. But like I said, at the end of the day, until this team gets better football character, and until this team stops shooting itself in the foot, talking about anything pertaining to them is just really an exercise in futility. It's a waste of fucking time. And I don't see how anything is going to be different in 2016, where I'm going to be saying anything different about them come at the end of the year. I just don't. If anything, I'd be surprised if they didn't nosedive in the wrong direction, because at some point in time, you can only get to a certain spot at so many years in a row and not get past that point to where the reality sets in that you're just not good enough, and you start to believe that you're just not good enough. Then guys are going to back off a little bit, and your performance overall is going to suffer.